Okay, let's dig a little further into what was really a bad day on the U.S. stock market. For that, we have Peter Armstrong, who's following the latest for us in Washington. So, Peter, President Trump has already responded to that jobs report by firing the head of labor statistics. So what's going on there?
Yeah, it's been a pretty tumultuous day here. Look, these jobs numbers were important because they were supposed to bolster the main argument from the White House that the economy here has been thriving in spite of tariffs, right? All the experts, all the economists had said if you go ahead and upend the global trade order, it's going to come with some pain. And some of that pain is going to happen right here in the United States. You see economic growth kind of falter. You would see jobs be lost. You would see costs go up for consumers. And frankly, Sarah, we hadn't seen a lot of evidence of that until now. There had been some signs in the tea leaves, and I'll get to that in a second. But this jobs number was supposed to bolster their argument on the day after all of these tariffs had been kicked in. The White House was supposed to be able to hold up the jobs report and say, you look, all you experts were wrong, and we've been right all along. The jobs numbers for July were the ones we got today, and they came out, I think it was 73,000 jobs created in July. That's actually pretty bad in the United States. That was way below what had been expected. But the headline wasn't that. It was that they revised, they got more data, went back and saw what was actually happening on the ground in May and June, and they revised the jobs numbers for May and June down by 258,000 jobs, so way lower than expectations. May only saw 19,000 jobs created. June saw 14,000 jobs created. Just for context, usually you're looking at like 100 to 200,000 jobs added in a month, so way below the average. Now, as the day went on, markets sold off. People started to worry. Even the president's main economic advisor admitted, look, we've caused some turmoil in markets. We get that. We've deported a bunch of people. That sort of messed up the main sort of jobs numbers, and that's important. But then, even as that was happening, Donald Trump first starts sending out social media posts. Then, just before he flew off to New Jersey, he spoke to reporters about what he was going to do. Take a listen to this.
Yeah, I think so. And if you look at before the election, the same kind of thing happened. And I think you'll see some very interesting information come out. But you have to have honest reports. And when you look at those numbers, or when you look at just before the election, and then after the election, they corrected it by 800,000 or 900,000 jobs, yeah, I would say so.
And so in doing that, he fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the woman in charge of that jobs report that came out this morning, and said he's going to put somebody in there that will give numbers. He said those numbers are rigged against him and against the Republican Party. So a pretty tumultuous day that, in Canada, we've been paying awfully a lot of attention to the tariffs, of course. Here, they've been paying a lot of attention to that.
Peter, last night you were on the air with us when the executive order came down, and you were so great at being able to interpret it and explain what was going on. Here's one for you. What's your crystal ball say about what's next to come in this story as we watch it unfold?
So, there's sort of two paths to watch. One is, as David Common was just talking about, where we go with the negotiations. And I have to admit, whether you're listening to Kevin Hassett talk today, one of the main trade advisors, or Howard Lutnick, they all sort of gave the impression, and even Dominic LeBlanc, were showing that these negotiations didn't abruptly end. These very much feel like they're ongoing. So that's one thing to keep an eye on. But the other is this economic data. Like, the story about the jobs numbers isn't about whether they added or lost jobs in July or this revision in May or June. It's about whether that change in the labor market is indicative of a bigger picture change in the economy. So we have to watch for GDP numbers. We have to watch for CPI numbers. We have to watch the corporate earnings that keep coming in, being pretty lousy for big American companies that are bearing the weight of these tariffs. And that's why, coming back to the notion that Trump is firing the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, you have people saying that's dangerous and that it's a bad precedent because it undermines the faith in those data, those numbers as they come out. And And so as we watch them and they start to tell us that maybe this was a crack in that very solid foundation of economic growth, and that those tariffs are starting to have the impact that we thought they might, that the damage wasn't averted, it was simply delayed. But now you have that undermining of the faith in the institutions that are telling us that. And that's why that story today about the firing, about the jobs numbers, isn't just about those specific acts. It's about what impact that has on the data as they come forward.
As always, thanks, Peter.
You bet.